Mr. President, at the outset, let me thank you for convening this annual open debate today on the important theme of protection of civilians in armed conflict. The world is witnessing a surge in armed conflict, and the civilians continue to be victims of such conflicts. It's highly alarming to see that in 2024, as per ICRC records, the number of victims affected by armed conflict has increased, with 56,000 cases registered of missing persons alone. It's a paramount responsibility of the national governments to create a conducive environment where civilians are safe and secure. While we acknowledge the national responsibility, we should not ignore the adverse impacts of all forms of terrorism, including those emanating from across borders in today's debate on protection of civilians. It is needless to mention that the terror entities have gained significantly enhanced capabilities by having access to new and emerging technologies, which present us with new threats, particularly to the civilian populations. In this regard, the efforts of the Council and of the international community should be directed at assisting national authorities in developing capabilities and capacities to protect civilians. It's unfortunate that the parties to the armed conflicts continue to attack civilian populations, particularly women, children, and other vulnerable groups, as well as indispensable civilian infrastructure, such as hospitals, by projecting them as legitimate targets. Regrettably, during armed conflicts, civilians, including women and children, are used as human shields for military operations and terrorist activities. Therefore, it is paramount that the international community resolves to take concrete actions towards the implementation of relevant Security Council resolutions that have been previously adopted. Mr. President, any attack on civilians and humanitarian workers is a grave violation of international law, in particular international humanitarian law. The existing legal framework concerning the protection of civilians cannot be overlooked. Respect for principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty and territorial integrity of member states, should remain the basis for all actions taken by the Council for the protection of civilians. A politically motivated decision to intervene in an armed conflict situation may have devastating consequences, including to the civilian population, and therefore must be prevented. Furthermore, any intervention must be proportionate and based on credible and verified threat perception. The Council and the international community must take necessary measures to ensure effective and timely protection of civilians, including their life, dignity, and rights. The core principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence must continue to guide the operations of all humanitarian agencies and organizations. Mr. President, I am constrained to respond to the baseless allegations of the representative of Pakistan on a number of issues. First, India has experienced decades of Pakistani-sponsored terrorist attacks across our borders. This has ranged from the horrific 26/11 attack on the city of Mumbai to the barbaric mass murder of innocent tourists in Pahalgam in April 2025. The victims of Pakistani terrorism have been predominantly civilians, since its objective has been to attack our prosperity, our progress, and our morale. For such a nation to even participate in a discussion on protection of civilians is an affront to the international community. Second, Pakistan has repeatedly used a civilian cover to advance the cause of terrorism. We just recently saw senior government, police, and military officials pay respects at the funeral of noted terrorists targeted by Operation Sindoor. A nation that makes no distinction between terrorists and civilians has no credentials to speak about protecting civilians. Third, earlier this month, the Pakistani army deliberately shelled our border villages, killing more than 20 civilians and injuring more than 80. There was intentional targeting of places of worship, including gurudwaras, temples, and convents, as well as medical facilities. To preach at this body after such behavior is grossly hypocritical. Let us be clear. Protection of civilians should not serve as an argument for protection of UN-designated terrorists. The international community must come together on zero tolerance for terrorism and calling out those who sponsor and defend it. In conclusion, Mr. President, my delegation reaffirms its commitment to working in close cooperation with the international community to alleviate the suffering of civilians affected by armed conflict. I thank you, Mr. President.
you.